Right. Go. Come.
Testing.
Okay, so you will not be able to help me. Oh.
And I know Gina's got a class tonight, so we already kind of talked about maybe trying to get out a little bit earlier tonight. We'll see how that goes. We have a lot on the agenda, a lot of things to talk about. So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:02. Andrew, would you like to do the roll call for us?
Commissioner Wolf,
Present.
Commissioner McAtee,
Present.
Commissioner Schumann,
Present.
Commissioner Goulet,
Present.
Commissioner Ventura.
She just sent an email that she needs the Zoom link. Joe, can you send that to her?
Commissioner Seagraves, Commissioner Kirkpatrick,
Aaron is here.
Commissioner Thompson,
Present.
Commissioner Settles.
Present.
With 7 present, 2 absent, there is a quorum.
Great. So yeah, Joe or Andrew, if you can send Jakara the link. She's
I
looking.
did, but
She's looking for it.
I didn't get an email from her.
Okay, she just emailed me.
If you forward me her email, I'll make sure I just send her the link. Because obviously the email I have is incorrect.
Okay. It is winging its way to you.
Awesome.
All right. While Joe's doing that, thanks to Joe for helping to get the agenda finalized and posted for tonight's meeting and distributed out to the group. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda. Are there any items that anybody would like to add for discussion tonight or add to the agenda? Hearing none. Is there a motion to
Hello,
approve the agenda?
everyone. I'm sorry.
Hi, Jakara, welcome. We're glad you're here. We were just looking at the agenda and just had asked if there are any items for approval on the agenda. To add to the agenda, I mean. If not, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Is there a
Will do.
motion?
I move.
Motion, Michael? Is there
I'll
a second?
I'll second.
Second, Garrett. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And I guess before we jump in anywhere else, I should have, after the roll call, welcomed City Council Member Annie Somerville, who's with us tonight, and super excited that she has been appointed to be our City Council liaison for the Arts Commission. So welcome, Annie. Is there any
Hello.
remarks you want to share, kind of as you're stepping into your new role tonight?
Well, I'm excited. I helped write the legislation for this, and I'm excited. I have ideas, of course, but I'm just gonna sit back and watch you all discuss what's on your agenda, and then happy to work with all of you as as you feel necessary.
Fantastic. Well, we really appreciate your being with us and to help us, right, have a conduit for communication back with City Council, and for you also to give us guidance and like your ideas. So don't feel shy about sharing
I've
those
got
as
lots
we
of ideas.
go forward. That's awesome. So next item is we have audience participation and commission response. Do we have anybody with us?
There's
Not on the Zoom screen?
No, not currently anyone under the attendee screen.
Okay, great. And looks like Matthew, Councilmember Kirkpatrick joined us. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. We have a childcare snafu tonight.
That happens.
Yes.
So
We
We-
do have an audience.
Yes. There's lots of ideas.
that's awesome. That's great. So it's never too young to get started, either in city service or in the arts. So that's fantastic.
Teacher haircut.
So the first item that we have on our agenda tonight is the our commission bylaws, which Joe has very graciously had offered to draft for us. And there is a copy of the draft bylaws that was in the packet for tonight's meeting.
If I could
Andrew,
inter-
did you have, yep.
You went a little out of order in the agenda. After agenda approval, it's approval of the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. See, I told you guys, I've been on a Zoom screen all day today. So you're going to have to hold me accountable. Yes, let's go back to approval of the minutes. And thank you, Andrew, for preparing those for us from the last meeting. We do have the draft minutes from the commission meeting on August 20th, 2020. Hopefully you've had, all have had a chance to review those. Are there any changes or corrections that anybody saw that needed to be made? And seeing none, then, is there a motion for approval of the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Garrett Schumann. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Aaron Seagraves. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you, Andrew, on both counts. Appreciate that. So then we'll move into the discussion items. And the first item are the draft set of bylaws for the commission. Thanks to Joe for drafting those and sharing with those with us today. Joe, did you want to walk us through, kind of give us an overview, set the tone?
Yeah, so the bylaws are, for those of you who haven't been part of a governmental organization before, bylaws are pretty common for any board or commission. They kind of set up who the members are, how they function, what the objective of the board is, how officers are elected, and then meetings, certain things like, how many you have to have a quorum, things like that, and what's on the agenda. So these are very standard, pretty much as standard as most of our commissions. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look over them, but the sooner we get these kind of elected, approved, the sooner we can actually really use them and make sure, establish committees as necessary, or make sure people aren't going to be absent and all of those things. So,
Right.
Crazy in here.
There were a couple of things that you had shared that you might also recommend including or changing.
Yes. There's one reference to the city planner. It should just be city staff, because these were stolen from the planning commission, obviously. Then the other thing that I just didn't know, city council has in their bylaws or in the charter that all council meetings end at 10. To kind of give people, like, this is how long we should be taking during our meetings. I just brought up, maybe if you guys wanted making it at 9, you can extend that if there is some really large topics. But that's something that does seem to work okay in certain circumstances. Now, we have had council meetings go to 2 a.m., but really it kind of hopefully keeps the meeting going. You don't have to do that. It was just a recommendation, or at least an idea. So, was there a third one, Jennifer, that I had?
I thought you had mentioned something about the procedures for who could add an item to introduce an item to the agenda.
Yeah, so actually the last thing was city council has 2 members of the commission can add something to the council. Right now it's basically staff or the chair in these bylaws. So I don't know if that's something you guys want. Obviously, I think this board will work together very well. But sometimes, having it go through the chair if they don't want it, other people could do it. So that would be the third thing. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a smart thing to include. I don't anticipate being that difficult, but I think it's just a good practice to be able to allow a number of council members to also, commission members also, to recommend putting something on the agenda. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about those particular items that Joe mentioned? And if not, we can go into like any other sections of the bylaws where you may have had questions or suggestions.
Can I just clarify what?
Yes, Gina.
The person who, commenting on what Joe just said, so yourself and member from city council can add to our agenda or to the city council agenda?
That's what city council has. Any 2 members of council can add anything to the agenda. So how that would come here is any 2 members of the commission could add something to the agenda if they so chose, without having to go through the chair.
Right. And we have also, just as a standing practice, the procedure of at the beginning of a meeting, right, we as a group entertain the full agenda, and at that time can also entertain changes to the agenda by vote. Did that answer your question, Gina?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Garrett?
My only question is, like, procedurally, do we vote on what we have now and then we'll change to add in the language that's not there that we were just talking about? Or are we voting on a future modified version of what we were sent.
I would say that you guys can make adjustments to this and adopt it. And then obviously it could be amended, but you don't have to vote on this and go back.
Okay.
You can make changes to this right now. And
Right.
staff will make those changes because I have the Word doc on my desktop. So it's I could literally make the changes live and then you guys would just get emailed them out.
Okay.
after they're adopted.
Right, right. Were there other items in the bylaws, the draft bylaws, that any of the members had questions on or suggestions for? Michael?
Yeah, so I was looking at Article 5, Section 10, the reference to Robert's Rules. The meetings that I've had, yeah, you know, that smirk too. That's kind of what I thought when I saw that. The meetings that I've been a part of, the committees I've been a part of that have adhered very strictly to Robert's Rules have been frankly stifling. So, and again, like Joe said, this doesn't appear to be a very contentious group and we seem to have like a good flow going on. So I didn't want that to be an impediment while it is attempting to facilitate. And that's been my experience with that particular scheme. So that's just something I wanted to raise.
So can I just make a
Please.
response to that? While Robert's Rules can be stifling, it's usually one of the best ways to have conversation. I have been on boards with 2 other forms of rules of order, and they go and they are actually way less open and communicative. And so it's like you kind of set time limits, and it's a lot more challenging to run. And so with Robert's Rules, there are flexibility unless something gets contentious, and then you can use Robert's Rules. But really, even at council, it's rare for us to really use Robert's Rules, even with contentious items.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's a good guideline, a practice to have, and it's my understanding that that's the standard practice across the commissions for the city as well as for city council.
Yep.
So there's some consistency there. Other questions or comments, Kimmy?
Last week we had, or not last week, last month, we had kind of talked about committees, and I just wanted some clarification on like what a committee can consist of slash, I know that in the document you sent out, it says that it just needs to be less than the quorum of the group, but I just wanted some more clarification on what could constitute a committee.
Mm-hmm. Joe or Andrew?
Per this, a committee would be less than a quorum. So typically 3 members or 4 members, since this is a 9-member board. So 4 members or less, and then other people as appointed. So as long as it's not a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, suggestions?
It is important when forming a committee, regardless of quorum, if it's over 2 people, it would be subject to the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
So you could have a working committee of 2 members, and that would be fine. Not an open session, but above that would constitute a need for a meeting.
Thank you, Andrew. That's important to be well aware of. I had one, and this is a really kind of a very simple suggestion, and I don't know if there are other commissions that do it, but I wondered if we might want to consider including an announcements section, perhaps after the last audience participation before adjournment. I was thinking that with all of the organizations and groups and individual creative practices that we're all kind of doing and part of, that could be a really great way of kind of sharing information, sharing kind of who's doing what, keeping us aware of what, the pulse of the arts and cultural community in the city. And I didn't know if that was something that was standard practice for us to be able to do kind of a really quick round robin among the members at the end of the meeting.
Yeah,
Does that sound appealing to people?
Also, just so you know, and I've added it in the case, unless anyone has any objection.
Okay.
You can have more things on your agenda than just these,
Sure.
but I do think
These are the
announcements is
standards.
these are the standards. So.
Okay, great. And I think the only other thing that I was going to recommend, and this is not a reflection of your work, Joe, but it was, I think, a carryover from the original ordinance that came to City Council from the City Attorney's Office. If we can just, as we're finalizing these, if we can do a careful spell check in addition to not just using the computer spell check, because the word public gets misinterpreted very commonly.
That is already changed.
Thank you.
I thought
Enough
Andrew
said.
normally did that.
Good eye.
But,
Enough said. Thank you.
That was a direct cut from the ordinance, so I guess
I know. That's okay. But thank you for taking care of that.
that's what we educate people on now.
That's right. So that's where spell check gets us into trouble. So to recap, what we have discussed as amendments, adjustments to this draft set of bylaws would be to replace references to this, where it says city planner, to city staff, which makes it appropriate then to the work that we're doing. We would include the reference to city staff, the chair, 3 members of the commission being able to add an item to the agenda. And the other item was, do we want to have a end time set for our meetings as 9 or 10 o'clock, which would then give us the opportunity, if we felt the need to continue past that, we would vote to extend, entertain a motion to extend. How does the group feel about that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all those additions.
Yeah, I think having an end time is always good, even if we end early or if we need to extend it. I think just having it so we know, we can kind of plan ahead. I think that's sorry, my dog's barking. That's a good idea.
No, I agree. I agree with that for sure. Just to have a expected time, like she said, to plan. I like that a lot.
Great. 9 or 10 o'clock.
9.
What's up?
I
9
say
o'clock.
9.
9.
That'll keep us efficient and we can always extend.
Are we technically doing Thursday nights every time?
So that was the original, when we discussed our meeting schedule at our very first meeting, we discussed keeping to the Thursdays at 7 o'clock on the 3rd Thursday of the month, recognizing that from time to time that may not align with people's schedules.
I have a standing at 8:30 now, and they just opened the rinks, so it's like my one kind of job that I cannot not do, my highest pay rate. So it's on Thursday nights. It starts at 8:30.
So
I could go at 6:30. I could go. It's like my only night gig. I'm really sorry. It was supposed to be Wednesday. It switched.
right, I get that. We all have stuff like that happens from time to time for sure. And I know it's going to be hard for us to land on a time that works for all of us all the time. I know members have and city staff have kind of worked to kind of plan around now the game plan of Thursday nights, but I'm completely open how other members of the commission feel about making a change. thoughts?
We also adopt a new meeting schedule in December of every year for the following year. And so our meeting dates and times are already set for this year. We can change them, but also we can change them going in 2021 as well. It's not a definite thing.
Right.
I apologize. I just know that we've been in Ohio to work, and now we're back here, and I don't know what's going to happen with sports, and so I don't want anybody to make any decisions based on that.
Right.
But once, actually, yeah, I'm. This is actually the only class I'm teaching in as well.
Yeah.
So,
So
is it
Kara?
issue? I'm sorry. Is it a big issue that she has to leave early on Thursdays then, as long as she's here on time?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. And maybe Gina, what we can do is stick to the schedule that we have, and we can work in terms of like agenda, like the flow of the agenda, to make sure that items that are aligned with issues that you're particularly attuned to, that we can kind of make some adjustments on the flow of the meeting, if that helps. And we can also work to be really efficient. So hopefully you wouldn't miss as much of the meeting, and maybe we wait and see how that goes and come back and consider. So, I mean, I'm just concerned that we're all going to have things from time to time that we're going to have a hard time working around.
There's only 3 more meetings on this year's schedule, so December we can rework it so it fits.
Right. And I also recognize for the city staff that we're also juggling kind of all the other meetings that are on the calendar. So it's not just like our meeting, that's the puzzle piece too. But thank you for bringing that to our attention, Gina. We'll work with you as best as we can because we know your voice is important. So sounds like 9 o'clock as a ending time would be what we would be setting as a goal. And I think those were the revisions that we've discussed making, and then adding announcements as a kind of a standing item on the agenda. Are there any other items anybody would like to add or change or question? If then we're good to go on those, shall we then entertain a motion on the bylaws as presented with the revisions we discussed at tonight's meeting? Is that the right thing to do there, Joe and Andrew?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Motion by Commissioner Wolf. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Ventura. Any other questions, comments, suggestions, further conversation?
This you do need to vote on.
By roll call vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Andrew, then can you do the roll call?
Commissioner Wolf,
Yes.
Commissioner McAtee,
Yes.
Commissioner Schumann,
Yes.
Commissioner Goulet,
Yes.
Commissioner Ventura,
Yes.
Commissioner Seagraves,
Yes.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yep.
Commissioner Suttles.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Joe, for your work on this too. So you've already incorporated changes. You'll share that back out with the commission either ahead of time or with the next packet?
I'll get them out to you in the next 20 minutes.
Fantastic. And we have our rule book ready to go for the work ahead. Thanks. So then the next item on the agenda is kind of continued discussion from our last meeting regarding the desire to organize and promote an online community and artist survey so that we can kind of as a grounding framework for our continued work on setting goals and priorities and focusing on strategies for the work ahead, that we are being very mindful that we are both advisory to City Council, but we are grounded in what our creative community, what our artists need to thrive in Ypsilanti, and what are the interests, what is our community, what would our community like us to be focused on, and how are they engaging in the arts in our community? What do they love? What do they like to see? What would they like to see as priorities? And so at the last meeting, I had agreed that I was going to do a little bit of legwork and work on pulling some model survey templates. I didn't get as far as with that as I would have hoped. One of the resources that I hoped that I had access to, and I'm still working on it, is Creative Many, the organization, the statewide organization that I used to work with, had done a number of these surveys for different communities in Michigan, sometimes just for artists and sometimes kind of a combined two-part for artists or community. And with their closing of operations, I'm trying to get access to those original files so that we can use those as a resource. In addition, though, I've reached out to a couple of colleagues nationally, one of them, Ruby Lopez Harper, who's the director of local arts agencies at Americans for the Arts. And I've asked Ruby to suggest to us some peer models, similar communities that are kind of have done this work. And so I will eventually soon be able to have some additional models to share with you. But I did provide a couple of links, which if you haven't had a chance to look at them yet, I'd encourage the members to kind of wander around on these sites. And the first one with regard to our interest in listening to our creative and artistic community is the Artists Thrive initiative, which was grounded, was really started, kind of spurred by the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation in Connecticut, which has had a deep body of grant-making work helping to empower artists and have artists have thriving practices. And in 2016, they organized a national group of leading artists and arts organizations, people who are working to nurture artists, funders, and they developed this Artists Thrive initiative, which is really focused on setting, they've developed a social impact rubrics model to define kind of a series of measurements that really are benchmarks for how communities and organizations are effectively and fairly and equitably working with and partnering with artists, empowering artists. And as part of this initiative, they have also developed some self-assessment tools that artists can take. And if you look at their homepage, there's like a two buttons that you can click. If you're an artist, you can go into that portal, and it's a very kind of simple, they've got two tools, one that's more kind of survey-based that like groups like ours could distribute to artists to get responses. Another one is more interview-based, where you know, we could organize a series of small conversations with local artists to get their feedback. But it's really designed for the artists to really be driving kind of how they're feeling about their practice in the place where they've chosen to practice. And then the other half of it is focused on organizations, groups, could be municipalities, could be nonprofit organizations, could be universities, could be kind of any kind of organization that does work with artists or is just kind of stepping into doing work with artists. And there's a whole process of really kind of being very thoughtful and evaluating how that current experience is, you know, how you are engaging, And the rubric then is used as a way to kind of measure kind of where you are in that moment, and sets aspirations for how you might like to improve or grow those relationships and those opportunities. So I thought that in the work that I did previously, this Artists Thrive initiative has really been kind of a groundbreaking national, it's kind of a leading model for really being mindful about what artists need to be successful in a place, and the role that we all play in how we help them be successful in place. So I wanted to share that as a kind of a grounding point for us, and hope that you have an opportunity to dive into that. As I share that, there's also, they have conveniently for us, they're doing their annual, what would be their annual summit in person, they're doing virtually. And there's a link to that summit, which is the September 29th through October 1st, coming up really soon. The registration fee for that is either zero, you can't afford to pay anything and you get access to all the recordings, or it's like $35, like I'm feeling I'm kind of doing okay financially, and $50 if I feel like I'm being really successful. So you get to choose kind of what you want to pay to participate, which is kind of aligns with their thinking on the model. So it's an easy access point, and I thought that members with interest in kind of the survey work might want to register just even to get access to the recordings, and then that way you can kind of jump into that and soak those up as you are interested. Any questions, any thoughts on that little piece?
When I was, sorry, go for it.
No, go for it, Michael.
Oh, well, so yeah, when I was looking at it, I definitely like picked up on that reflexive, like this would be a really useful tool. I think this is what your intention was for kind of realistically looking at ourselves and seeing where we are, whether the things that we're doing and the things that we are planning on doing are actually useful and impactful.
Right.
Okay, so if that was your intention with that resource, then yeah. But I was struggling to find out how we could use that to engage directly, but more engaging conceptually. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is definitely it is a different kind of tool than just like putting out an online survey to find out, you know, I'm a visual artist and I'm doing that full time, or I have another job to support my artwork, and I have a studio, I don't have a studio. I mean, I think that kind of a survey would be very helpful for us at the starting point. This is kind of a different lens of how we might want to continue a conversation with artists in the community. So it's just, I'm throwing it out for information just to kind of ground us moving forward. Other thoughts or questions? If not, the only other thing that I did also share just for information for us to have it in our back pocket, Americans for the Arts, the National Arts Peer, also has a research and survey division. And I know that we don't currently have budget to be able to run a survey, but I did want to put it out there that they do for a fairly reasonable fee. I think their fees start at like $3,500. Can work with communities to be able to design a survey template that does all the things and, you know, asks all the questions that we want, and then helps with kind of implementing the survey and doing the reporting. I think that they have a range of how much of their service you want, whether it's just to help you craft the survey and then you run it and you do the reporting, which I think would be more in line with what we would need, but it could potentially be an opportunity for us to be able to get kind of quicker template that aligns with kind of other leading models nationally. So and again, I know we don't have budget, but that perhaps could be something that we could aspire to. And even if we start out with running our own survey, this could be an opportunity in the future for us to contemplate as part of a budget that we could kind of do deeper dive assessments and listening with the community. So that's as far as I've gotten. And I know that Aaron and Kimmy and Garrett, the three of you had also expressed an interest in kind of diving in here. And I apologize, I haven't had time to like organize us as the right kind of size committee to really get moving on this. I wondered if perhaps the three of you or anybody else that's interested that might want to help kind of do some additional digging to look for some models that we could then kind of take a look at as a small committee and then bring some kind of recommendations back to the commission. Kimmy?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. And I know that when I saw you like 2 weeks ago and I said, I have something to send you and I didn't send it. So I apologize for that. But I spoke to, I work at the DIA and we have an evaluations team. So I spoke to our head of the department and he sent me some stuff. And after I thought about it, it's not it's something that I was allowed to share with the commission, but I know that if I share it with the whole commission, it has to be shared with the entire community. So I was kind of paring down some of the important things that he pointed out. So I'll write up some sort of document with that. But anyways, he had some suggestions on just, you know, like how we need to think, like how, you know, like we need to know where we want to go to be able to figure out how to get there. So he has some suggestions with that. And then he sent me a bunch of samples of questions that they ask people who come to the museum. So, you know, those, and some of them obviously are tailored to the museum, but they can be transferred to like maybe something that we want.
Right.
Most of them are more related to what we would ask of the community and less about what we would ask the artists, but I'm sure that, you know, we could still look at it to kind of maybe get some ideas of what we want to ask.
Right. That would be great, Kimmy, if you're willing to share that, that'd be awesome. Because I do think like an important part of this is kind of narrowing down what we want to know, what we want to find out, right? What's important, and then that kind of helps shape the survey and the questions that we want to ask.
For sure.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, and I would like to just chime in just as part of the discussion that I looked at the Artists Thrive website, and it looked like, I mean, I couldn't really tell exactly, not seeing, you know, good examples that they would provide on the website, but it seems like it would be a really powerful and empowering survey for artists individually to take. And it did seem like there was an option to share it with at least that organization. I don't know if it would be possible to share locally. And if it were, then it probably would be a really great tool to get a sense of individual artists in Ypsilanti, for example.
Right.
But I don't know if that's possible.
I'm listening. I'm going to put my dog out of my office.
Yeah, no,
Hang on 1 second.
So I was really kind of excited by that tool. And of course, you know, the other example could be something that we could use, you know, if we had the funding.
They're like toddlers, they're in or out.
Initiate a survey, you know, to our needs, or to tailor a survey to our needs. And so yeah, but I would be interested in seeing if there's any other examples out there that we could probably mimic or, you know, use.
That'd be great. Garrett?
Actually, Mike had his hand up before I did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries. On that point exactly, on that point, Aaron, I actually have contacts within the arts community at the City of Indianapolis Parks Department that do very kind of actually specifically that. I've reached out to them to try to get some information, but they're still winding down their summer program. So I'm probably maybe like in the next month, I might be able to get back with them when they'll be kind of slow enough to actually sit down and talk to me for half an hour. but that is exactly specifically the kind of stuff that I think I'm going to have some access to from
That'd be
a
great.
large city from a robust program.
That would be great. Thank you, Michael. Garrett?
Thank you for sharing these models, and I love how different they are in their approaches, and sort of I'm new to this kind of evaluation, so it's nice to see the range of things that are possible. I'd had this thought before looking at those links today, and so but they kind of lined up. I looked at one of the examples for the city surveys that Americans for the Arts has done, and I recognize that were we to do this, we could certainly customize it to our needs, but it was very business focused. Artists Thrive was very artist focused, and so I think I'd be interested in looking into things that give more voice to what the community is looking for from the city in terms of the arts. I feel like those are like, I know the first thing in the ordinance and our bylaws is about economic development. I know that's very important in how arts commissions work. But I think it's those, to me, that those seem like kind of our three main constituencies are economic interests, artists, and then what the community wants. And I don't have any examples right now, but I would love to find ways that really sort of explore like what people like about Ypsilanti, like from a sonic perspective, a visual perspective, other like aesthetic things, because that could even be a good prompt for artistic projects that we pursue or sponsor or something like that. So that's very embryonic, but I'll work on it for next week, next month.
That'd be great. Other thoughts? Other commission members? Lynn? Jakara, Matthew?
I mean, not really. I guess I'll just echo. I mean, I think a survey like this, I mean, it seems like what we're trying to do, just maybe I'm clarifying our purpose, is to collect information about what we can do from the artist community. I mean, it might be useful to also extend some kind of survey to the larger community too at some point.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
Just in terms of what the community wants or it's lacking.
Right. Well, and I think that was what we had talked about last month, was the opportunity that those are really two core audiences that are essential to setting the framework for what we do, and they are unique. The surveys for each of those groups would be unique. There might be some overlap. And you can either run those as completely independent at different times kind of surveys, or you can run them as like a combined online survey. And kind of the first question will be like, I'm answering this as an artist, and you get kind of moved into that part of the survey, or I'm answering this as a community member, and you get channeled that way. And then there may be some kind of combined questions at the end. So kind of thinking about the opportunity for that kind of a survey tool perhaps to be where we would start, so that as we're grounding kind of our priorities and our goals as a commission, that we have that collective kind of feedback from both of those critical constituencies. And also recognizing kind of for Councilmember Somerville, that a big part of wanting to do this kind of survey tool early on is because of COVID, we don't have a really good way to be able to have in-person meetings to get feedback, which would always be, a really wise thing to do. So, well, if Kimmy, in the interest of time, if Kimmy and Aaron and Garrett are interested and on board for helping to share additional models, and maybe what we can do is have you share those with me and with Joe. Is that so that we can kind of synthesize and organize it to bring a report back to the commission for the October meeting, at least be able to take it to the next step? That would be really great. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
That game plan?
I can look into it, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay. Awesome. So then moving on, the next item we had on our agenda, this was a item for discussion that Commissioner Thompson, that Gina had recommended that we give some consideration to, and I think everybody was on board to try to work with the city to get something drafted, was the busking policy, to have a program that would set up a system for performing street art performers to be able to have like an annual process for being able to apply, to have a permit to do that at certain locations. And we were solidly, Joe, at last month's meeting, like totally seeing this as a really simple thing that could be considered as a short-term win in terms of bringing a recommendation back to the city. I shared, only because I had been on a grants panel, and I reviewed the grant application for the Arts Council of the Greater Kalamazoo region. And they had a description about their busking program and their grant applications. So I remembered that that was one that I was aware of. And so I did share a link for you to that model. It's pretty straightforward. They have an annual process, a pretty simple application process once a year. They have a map that shows the locations where street performances can happen. Performers, as part of the application, kind of share, like, do they need amplification, kind of information about their performance-based work. And so like they're matched with kind of where they're able to perform based on that process. And as I understand it, the Kalamazoo Arts Council manages and reviews those applications and works with the city to manage that process. So that was just one model that I was aware of. And I don't know if any of the rest of you are aware of other communities that have been doing this successfully. Joe, I don't know if this is something that you have in your wheelhouse.
We can do some research as staff. It is just entertaining that this week even we had a complaint by a downtown resident of a busker singing karaoke, only 5 songs, but for 8 hours at a time in downtown. But I think there's definitely a way to work through some of those things. It just was, it's entertaining, but we can see what other communities do, model off of Kalamazoo and see some others.
That'd be great. Michael?
Is this really a problem that we need to be addressing? I mean, I'm downtown and in Depot Town all the time, and like I'm kind of curious as to like why this is even on anybody's radar.
No, so I think the goal of the Arts Commission is to actually allow for busking. The only reason I bring up the little fun anecdote was that there's busking and then there's 8 hours a day disrupting a neighborhood. But no, I think overall we're fully in favor of busking. We just don't have a way to permit it at this point. And so that's what this would be doing. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, the way I see it, I mean, I live very close to downtown and walk around downtown and Depot Town all the time, and Riverside Park, and rarely see buskers. So to me, this would actually maybe encourage more busking, is to say, oh, hey, this is something you could do. You know, there's occasionally somebody doing something, but, you know, I think it's maybe a way to like encourage some people to go downtown and you know, Depot Town, wherever, and like liven it up a little bit in ways that it's not livened.
Right. And I think that was the context that it was offered up as a potential project that we could be part of, is that it would be a framework designed to encourage street performance and more street performance as part of the creative vibe of the city.
It could be,
as opposed to making it more difficult.
It could be even framed that way, because one of the things that I would be afraid of, and maybe this echoes the Michael's question, is that people would see this as like a kind of intrusion. You know what I mean? Like nothing is stopping people from busking now, but maybe it could be pitched as we want people to come out, and this is a method of like formalizing that. I mean, I assume we're going to give these things away is the plan. Although I guess eventually we'll charge, I don't know, but the way of like asking people to come down, like, you know, hey, if you're a mime, we would love a downtown mime or something. I don't know, you know, some way to like encourage more people to do it.
I mean, that's like, I'm all for encouraging that, but this is a nice carrot. What's the stick? Like this is all framed as a permit. This is all framed as registration.
Right.
Like
Right.
there's lots of incentive, but we're also like tracking and registering, and we're doing all that record keeping. So there's going to be like, what's the stick for non-compliance? Where's the other half of this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe we don't need to even have it be a license. Maybe it's just a busking campaign.
Because I think one of the reasons this came up in the last meeting was seeing this as a fairly easy way to present something in artistic in public spaces that we could say this is something the Arts Commission is doing. And I think beyond like the Kalamazoo model, there's a lot of great art models from Kalamazoo that's very formalized, and just seeing,
Right.
I opened the application, like it's great that it's so detailed, but I'm not sure if I want to be reviewing like a couple dozen every month. But I think, you know, we talked about like if we could have some kind of sign that buskers would check out or something, like and if we had designated spaces, this would be even easier. Just something like a relatively easy artistic presentation that we can point to as the Arts Commission is doing this, because there's so little that we can do in terms of putting on events and that kind of thing.
I've got some feelings about the first thing we're doing is like putting up, like taking applications and like registering things.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I think the intent was, and Gina, I see Gina's popped back on. Gina, I think you were the commissioner that initially raised the opportunity for us to explore the possibility of a busking program. And it was less intended to make it restrictive as much as it was to find a way to make it an invitation and a way to kind of enrich the community with more creative performances. That's a fine line. I hear what you're saying, Michael. Gina, are you there?
I'm here. I'm sorry,
you
just
wanna-
in and out.
I know. Did you
have? I'm not sure what the conversation is, but I think that part of it is that we wanted the busking quote unquote license to be free for X amount of time. And if that's the contingent that we're talking about, is that the point that we're sort of issuing? So I know that busking in Ann Arbor back in the day, you had to get like a little pass to put out. So when, you know, if somebody was breakdancing on the corner during art fair and they didn't have their busking little license or whatever, they could be asked to leave type thing, or they couldn't charge money or something like that. I don't know. So I understand that you feel like it's a, like tying up the artist and bureaucracy, and I think that more is that what the issue is?
Well, I think
so
that
I
was
think
the question.
More about getting the idea that there's an arts commission in Ypsilanti and that we are supporting the artists and that we, you know, we're trying to formalize and to get something done fairly quickly as well.
So this would be for something specifically for like Heritage Festival or Pride Parade or something specific and discrete rather than generally like through the
Could
course of
be.
the year?
I mean, I
Could be.
think that the original plan was that we were going to do it for the artists, period, and then come up with some sort of plan when they started charging for it. I have some musician friends who, you know, want to play, but they don't know where and when and who, and you know, who should they be talking to and that stuff. So I believe that's the. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I'm not sure what the pinching point is, but it's about getting the arts going in Ypsilanti in lieu of doing nothing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the other piece that just recently, kind of in conversation with the performance that has been allowed on Washington Street and Cross Street as a part of the closures, temporary closures for the restaurants. As I understand it, with the street closure being extended through October, there were concerns about the continuation of amplified music and music, you know, past a certain period of time. And I think that there's some opportunity for balance, whether it's as part of a street closure that's kind of a formal opportunity, or it's kind of within kind of the community, right, places expected and unexpected. Like, are there ways that we can set guidelines to encourage, right, performance opportunities, but perhaps in a way that balances kind of the timing or the noise impacts? I mean, I think that was something in the Kalamazoo model, was that they had very specific timeframes that were also sensitive to, right, the interests of all the different people that kind of are part of a space. So they were, you know, like ending at 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, depending upon the day of the week. So perhaps we've had some really good conversation around that. And I think that, like, what we're hearing is, like, there's both an opportunity to look at this as something that could be an incentive and encouraging kind of a promotional opportunity for performance in town, as well as, like, if not careful, it could be something that could be in reality another obstacle to have to go through, or it could be perceived as such. And so I'm wondering, Joe, grateful for your offer to help us research some additional models. If any of the other commission members are aware of communities that have models that we should take a look at, I would encourage you to send those to Joe and to myself. We can take a little bit of a closer look, keep this on the agenda, and kind of see where we land on it. Does that sound good to everybody? Is that good? Okay. So then our next item, we had talked last month about starting to build a list of prospective speakers that we could invite to come and share perspectives, experiences, best practice models with the commission. That would be really kind of a twofold, an opportunity to kind of build our own awareness and knowledge and potential partnership opportunities, but as well in sharing those with the community, right, to have that kind of added educational opportunity for the community at large. And so we had talked about tonight having a little bit of time on the agenda to suggest any names of arts and cultural leaders, whether that's locally, artists locally, creative, cultural, artistic leaders, broader community, statewide, nationally, that we might want to start putting on that list. So I'll open the floor to the members, if any of you have had some time to think about who you'd like to have come speak with us. And I think for the community at large and for our artist community, I think that we want to also issue an invitation for people that want to come and have some conversation with us. Any ideas, Garrett?
Well, this person is maybe more of a arts, he's an Ypsilanti resident who's an arts person who I would nominate in order to highlight someone in the community who's doing interesting work. His name is Andre Dowell. He works for the Sphinx organization, which is located in Southeast Michigan and specializes in promoting the inclusion of Black and Latinx string players and orchestras. And it's an organization that is local to our region, or I guess regional to us. But he is an Ypsilanti resident and I think would have a lot of interesting things to say about his experience with Sphinx. It doesn't have a ton, his work doesn't have a lot to do with community art making, but they do work on a national scale, and he's a really nice guy with great personality too. So he would be a good guest from that perspective, sort of with the public facing component that you mentioned. And we're friends. I think I could talk him into it. So,
Andre's a friend of mine too.
Oh, great.
He's a good guy.
That's good.
I know the whole crew.
Oh, very nice. I mean, thinking of it, just what came to mind, there are, including on the committee, of course, some really wonderfully experienced artistic people in Ypsilanti. It could be, I know that there are a lot of possibilities for what these speakers could speak to, but I think using it as an opportunity to highlight people such as Andre would be interesting to try to do.
That's great. Well, and I think that the perspective that he brings and the work that he's part of leading at Sphinx, focused on building equity in orchestras across the country and globally, is like a critical issue, regardless of if it's in music. Like that applies across the board, and so that perspective translates so richly across our work.
And he's lived in Ypsilanti for a long time, so I think he would be able to, I wouldn't want to speak for him, but I think he would be able to connect well to the work he's done to what we can do locally, or could try to do locally. So
that's great. Other people to suggest?
I think so. I haven't necessarily thought of names, but I've thought more about organizations that we could maybe talk to. Because as Garrett was saying, I think having people from Ypsilanti, at least to start, would be a great way to kind of promote just what's going on in the community. So, thinking about like the theater down in downtown, asking someone from that group to kind of talk with everyone, or even like the art center, whoever, and again, I'm sorry, I don't know, I haven't necessarily researched all the names for people, but the people who put on Dipsy every, twice a year, just thinking about, and even I think with Eastern, if we could get someone from the art department there to kind of talk about, or the music department or the theater department to talk to us and share what's going on, so that people can maybe feel more connected to the community and see that there are opportunities for them to either participate or to view what people are working on. So I think that, like I said at first, what I think would be the most important thing would be to start looking at who we can get from Ypsilanti, and then start to branch out once we've kind of promoted that a lot.
I'll also add, just on the, going with what we were talking about before with the busking, as under the public health situation that we're in now, and in the interest of trying to do something for the community, like if in October and November and our December meetings, we could have like a public presenter, that's something that we're doing. And that would be even easier to put together than a busking policy.
Yeah,
Very good.
I just want to
Matthew?
reiterate, I don't have any ideas of my own, but I really like the idea of looking at arts organizations. Just I'm reiterating what Kimmy just suggested. My daughter just turned the lights off. that because one of the things that I've had trouble finding myself is just a centralized location. Maybe this is 2 items down on our list, but reaching out to places that might have things to, like I'm in the English department at Eastern. We have a reading series every year, but I don't think that the word gets out about that beyond our own community, right? So I think like bringing people in to talk about how to create a more cohesive, just like a bigger sense of community, and maybe that's an arts calendar is what that is. But people from the art department, people from I think Dreamland is what you're talking about, like those different groups. Because I think sometimes those groups, especially I know in the writing community, there's sort of the people in Ann Arbor, the people at EMU, and then other people, right? And that they don't think that the other people care about them. So anyway, so I think that's a way to like bring those things together.
That's great. Other
Can
thoughts?
I make a suggestion? Oh, sorry.
You may.
Gary Horton would be a really great person to add to that list. I encouraged him to apply for this commission, but he lives in the township, so I know there's limited spots for out of city residents. So
Right.
but he's great.
He's awesome. His work is awesome. Other thoughts or suggestions? Lynn, anybody from the educational community besides you?
I think somebody should come in from Wonderfuls. Because they're probably one of the, they put on a pretty big event and have lasted 4 years. And one of the groups that's actually going to put on an event in the middle of this pandemic. So, and they incorporate a lot of the community, the children, the families, businesses.
What was the suggestion?
Wonderful Productions.
Okay.
They're the producers of Ipsy Glow and festivals and.
Right.
And in all full transparency, I'm their new executive director, but I did not put Lynn up to saying that.
She didn't.
And it wouldn't be me. We'd have, like, if that was of interest, we could invite both some of the founding members of that group and some of the community partners.
Well, it made me think of them because they got very involved with the schools. So.
Right. Garrett?
It might be going off of what Lynn just said and what Matt said before. It might be interesting seeing if we could organize like a separate like panel discussion with people in those communities. So like university people and then everyone else basically, maybe separate from this like individual speaker idea, just because like a lot of us, many people on this committee are involved with organizations in the area. There are other people, it could be an interesting way to connect, like a networking kind of thing, but also public facing, so community members can learn more or chime in and that sort of thing. And it would be easier to put together than like inventing an online calendar, which we should do, but like will take more time.
Right. That's an amazing idea and opportunity for us to think about kind of how we connect with, right, all of our local creatives and leaders, engage the community as part of that too, to think about that being kind of an ongoing program series that we could host. Wouldn't necessarily need to be, and this I'll look to Joe and Andrew, wouldn't necessarily need to be as part of a official meeting, but it could also be a programmatic thing that we could do as kind of a host. We'd have to kind of figure out the Open Meetings Act. Maybe we do incorporate it as part of a meeting.
Yeah, and if I can also add, I really like the idea of making it almost like a series, because I could see that potentially a lot of people / groups might want to be involved in it, and it would be nice to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to join in, and also that doesn't look like we're playing favorites with any one person or group. So I really do like the idea of making that, having a panel and then doing it, you know, throughout the year several times.
What do others think? Support in pursuing something like that? Thumbs up. Anybody want to jump in and help organize something like that? Anybody particularly?
I will say that I have a lot of interviewing experience from previous jobs. So in terms of like moderating a discussion or something like that, I would feel very comfortable doing that. And I'm happy to contribute in terms of like planning and that sort of thing. So as well.
Great. Anybody else?
If we've got a little bit more meat on these bones going forward, then that's like, I don't think we're quite at a point where we can say, hey, we want to talk about this particular thing. But that's something that I could see like raising with, there's what, 4 or 5 different arts departments in the College of Arts and Sciences at Eastern. Matt, do you know? I mean, I know that there's at least 3. There's music and dance. But there's several places we could start there to work our way through the community. There are several different places around, but obviously, like once we get there, once we have a little bit more meat on the skeleton, then that's something we could reach out and try to move a little bit forward. I would love to do that. I would love to do that. Sign me up for that when we get there.
I don't think that all of your artists are connected to the university by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I think that there's an entire section of town that's getting 0 sort of legs as far as this is concerned. And those are the people I'm interested in supporting at this point. Like, you know, I think that Park Ridge and that, you know, Sugar and these places have massively talented kids and artists, and that they should have just as much sort of input into this type of thing. That the idea is that we cannot leave them out.
Right.
So I don't think that, you know, I personally feel like we're seeing 4 different artists in the area all the time, and that they're getting a lot of the funding in the area, and that is something that cannot be sort of acceptable.
Right. That's an important point. And it could be that we could consider that kind of a speaker series or a panel series could be kind of organized by kind of different segments. I hate to use that word, of the creative sector. So there could be an individual artist focused series session, and focused on kind of needs, opportunities, realities of being a practicing artist in Ypsilanti. There could be one focused on what's happening in the schools. What are the struggles there? What are the needs? What are the gaps? Who's helping? There could be something related to performing groups or venues or university level programs. You know, it could be that there's so much, right, that is here, that there's so many conversations and different kind of opportunities and challenges and realities to tease out of all of that, that could be a really powerful opportunity to have that as an ongoing conversation that we could help to spearhead and cultivate.
So would that be something that would take place during our monthly meetings, or would that be something that would take place at a different time every month? The series or the panel? Because I like the idea of the series, something ongoing, bringing in all these different artists, giving them a chance to be highlighted and talk about their work from all over the community, as Gina said. But would it be something, be a part of this meeting, or are you thinking something that would be an additional once a month thing that Garrett would host?
I mean, I think that there are both of those as options when we think about speakers. I'm interested in hearing thoughts from the other commissioner. There's also the juggling of how we get our business done and have time enough for a rich conversation and listening with people. What do the rest of you think? Or staff?
Yeah, I
Kim?
think they're going towards like a more a panel-based event where there's multiple speakers. It would have to be, I think it would have to be like more of a series and an extra meeting or an extra program. But I guess initially I thought the speakers could come to our meetings also. When this idea was brought up, I thought initially that was probably would be a good thing just to have a 10-minute guest or something at each of our monthly regular commission meetings too. And that might be a way to start.
That's probably more realistic.
Yeah,
2 minutes.
In my brain, I thought of the like group panel conversations as a separate thing, maybe happening twice a year, 3 times a year. And I love the idea of theming it around specific things. And certainly when I volunteered myself to be at every one, I wasn't thinking about something once a month. So
No. And sometimes those are really great opportunities to invite members, not of us, as moderators too, that we're just kind of
totally,
helping to
absolutely
nudge and cultivate. Other thoughts on that or other names to put forward? Otherwise, if there aren't like kind of specific names, we can also invite all of you to, as you're thinking of potential speakers, to send them to me, to Joe, and we can kind of build a list. I was thinking kind of from a commission standpoint that sometimes could also be a broader community opportunity, thinking about inviting some of the leaders from Americans for the Arts. They travel and do things for free. They are doing a lot of community presentations and group meetings virtually these days and trying to really maximize that. So that's always a resource available for us. I was thinking about the opportunity to invite the executive director of the Michigan Council for the Arts and Cultural Affairs, Allison Watson. It would be great to have her come and share about what they're doing for her to get to know us. That would be a great opportunity to invite the community in and our creative community in to be kind of aware of those grant making opportunities. Culture Source and the Ann Arbor Arts Alliance as kind of our 2 regional umbrella organizations might be good speakers to bring in. So those were kind of some of the names kind of in that category that I was thinking of, but that could be something that we could position at our meetings, but then also promote that that's happening at a meeting to encourage people to join us. So we ready to move on? Do you want to just kind of continue sharing ideas on names and feeding those to Joe and I?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get the name. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna try to get the names of the people that did like the mural inside of the Park Ridge Center, because that was like a pretty
great.
big. Yeah.
That would be great. Okay. Then if we're ready to move on, the next item, we put this on from, I think it was a recommendation that came from Garrett to have some conversation, perhaps as kind of a future project that we would work to related to building a community arts calendar for Ypsilanti. And at the last meeting, we had some initial conversation about the opportunity to be kind of a helpful conduit for sharing information and promoting kind of the wild array of arts and creative activities and programs that are happening in IPSI. and I think we also had some conversation about kind of the opportunities to both learn from and connect with kind of other groups that have run these calendars. I think we acknowledge that these can often be really exciting when they get started, and then they become challenging to manage and monitor. Somebody has to curate the content that gets added in, and might that be an opportunity to partner with like Destination Ann Arbor Ipsy Real that does like event promoting? Do we have an opportunity to build some partnership? So it's on the agenda here. I don't know if anybody would want to kind of jump in, have any additional thoughts on that. Garrett, I know this was your suggestion last time.
Yeah, I haven't been able to make any progress on this since the last meeting, but I do think it would be certainly down the line, but something that would make a big difference and has kind of been in the background of some of the other things that we've talked about today. So.
Great. Okay. Well, we can keep it, unless there are others that want to jump in. We can keep it on the to-do list, so we don't. I don't want to say parking lot because I don't want it to be parked, but we'll keep it on our list. I mean, I think that this is really good as we're getting started, that we're starting to kind of define the possibilities of what we could be doing and where we could put our priorities. So we'll have time to get back to this. The next item then that we had that we put on the agenda for this month is to begin to have some conversation, and I think we'll also be looking to city staff to help guide us as we kind of take this on. But like, what is the process? What are the, like, who do you talk to if you want to do a public art project, or you want to have a performance, or you want to paint a mural? This actually came up, Lynn, and I'll ask you to jump in. Lynn had gotten an inquiry about from somebody about doing a mural, and it just really struck me that, and Lynn asked the same question, like, we really as commissioners need to have kind of a solid understanding of, if we get questions as we're out and about in the community, we should kind of know what the basic kind of how-to is to help somebody get started. How they propose an idea, how they come before us. Obviously, there's the opportunity just to present an idea, a request at a meeting, but kind of, are there more procedures that we should be aware of? And if there aren't, should we think about providing some clarity on that? Like, how do we make it easy for people with great ideas to bring them forward and help them be realized? So Lynn, did you want to share? You were the one who asked that this be on the agenda.
Yeah, so I was at the library downtown Michigan Avenue, and having a conversation with someone, and they said, well, you are part of the art commission. I have a friend that wants to do a mural on the street, one of the main streets in Ipsy. Where do they go to get permission or to find out if they can do that? And I didn't know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I talked to Jennifer about it, and
she didn't know.
we didn't know.
I knew who to call.
So can I jump in here, Jennifer?
Please, please.
What I was thinking is, and this kind of goes to the next agenda item as well, but really kind of creating a form on our website on if you're interested, fill out this form. It can be emailed out to the commission, and we can actually review it at our next meeting. That's kind of the best way. I know that the city manager really wants to see that happen, because we get requests all the time, and it's kind of been a case-by-case basis. And we've prior to this board actually starting, we had a few people approach us. We didn't really have a policy. What we're going to really want to look for, it's not content per se. In some instances, I guess it could be, but it would be more of if you're going to paint something on city property, we want to make sure it's there, it's approved by the historic district. If it's in the historic district, It's approved by the, and it's actually not going to weather poorly quickly. Obviously, when you paint things, it doesn't last forever, but we don't want something that's gone in a day. We want something, or after one rainstorm, we want something that can at least weather a little bit. And so that's kind of what I was thinking. I would need some help on some of the questions to put in the form, but it would be a pretty quick, easy form that we could easily do. We do that for many things at the city. So that's kind of what I was thinking. But I don't know if anyone had any other ideas.
Aaron, is this something that you've got? I mean, it would seem with your work in Ann Arbor that you've had experience.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, we didn't, I think with my time in the commission, we had guidelines for selecting and, promoting a specific art project. And that's actually something, now that we have the bylaws out of the way, that's probably one of the next steps we as a commission can take, because it is one of the objectives in the ordinance, the public art ordinance, to formulate guidelines as a commission in which we would make these determinations and selections of solicitations or of artwork in general, if we were going to, solicit an opportunity to create artwork in the city, for example. But yeah, Ann Arbor, the Public Art Commission in Ann Arbor definitely had those guidelines, and it would be something that we as a commission could begin to formulate, which would be, it'll take some time to do, and there's a lot to consider there. And I think, but a short-term step would be to look at what are the specific ordinances that are in place now with the city that might intersect with public art, such as a mural, like you were speaking to, Joe. What are the things to consider, such as if it's in a historic district, what does the city need? So having those things in place first and foremost would be a good step to take, in the next few months. So those are just some general thoughts. And I think if you were to look at public art commissions, all over the place in other cities and other states, you would find different examples of guidelines that we could use as a starting point too.
It would really be great to have your input and your expertise on that to help guide us, for sure.
Yeah, I can certainly look through some of the old stuff that I have, and I'm sure there's current guidelines posted with Ann Arbor, probably.
That'd be great. Other thoughts or ideas around this?
I had a question. So, just with respect to, I guess locations for public art, I know, like, what it is the idea that it kind of can be anything, and then, if we recommend it to city council, then they vote on it, or, would there be a situation where we might want to like narrow down where a public art installation can go, or I don't know, just my thought process is, like, is there any sort of like idea where there's like absolutely not, like, even if we suggest it, that's never going to be a thing, like that's never going to be a location that we can use? Would that be something that we would want to or need to incorporate into, those sorts of guidelines? I guess is my question.
Potentially. I mean, I think it could be any or all of those things as we move forward. Annie?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to chime in a little bit. I think it would be useful to get some context around the historic district commission stuff, but in terms of like, would council have to vote on it? I don't think so, especially if it's a private building. And so I think it would be cool to find out what the rules are. I don't know, Joe. I'm not sure.
A couple of things quickly to try to make sure that we can meet our 9 self-imposed deadline that we just created. I believe this commission would be the one to actually approve public art on city properties. That's why we have an arts commission. But as far as the historic district, we obviously don't want unpainted brick to be painted. That's a big deal. It's a big no-no. We want to make sure that the surface is actually cleaned appropriately and not power washed. There's a lot of things to help make sure we preserve our downtown and our historic buildings. And so all murals do have to go to the Historic District Commission if they're in the district. I don't think they've ever denied any unless it was on an unpainted building, but it is a process just to make sure that it's done correctly.
Right. And there are
Oh, sorry.
no, I was just going to say, and there are opportunities that if it's an unpainted brick surface, that a mural could be created on a board that would be hung and not impact, right, the historical integrity
Just
of
like
the
on
brick.
City Hall.
Right.
Yeah, there's one like that on the building across the street from 734.
Yeah.
The Depot Town mural.
Right.
I have
But that one I think is actually painted on the brick, and so we would allow that to be redone if the property owner.
no, that comes off.
That comes off.
Yeah, if you get closer to the building, you can see it. It's like attached to the building. I wish I could purchase it and put it inside my apartment since I do live in Depot Town. No, I have one idea I'm just going to share so I don't forget. It would be cool to create some sort of like solicit input from like local building owners and try to get like maybe a database of business building owners that would be interested in having murals done, so we can kind of like match buildings with artists. And then maybe like part of like, you know, council goal setting, I was thinking about a way to try to come up with like a fund to do like grant matching for businesses in the city to like kind of help support the artist and like do it 50-50 and kind of match the artist with the building type of thing.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I love that idea of matching the building with the artist. That's really cool.
Sorry that I'm laying down. My back is not doing well. So this is like the only
Okay.
position that's good for me.
Your brains are still working. Well, I think, you know, the other opportunity and just even confirming what the process is at present for, you know, whether it's a mural or whether it's some other kind of art experience or item could, and it, whether it's permanent or it's a fleeting thing, right? There's that range as well. Not all murals are intended to last, right? Some are intended to be super fleeting. But there's the opportunity for us to understand what the current kind of process and right reality, what the experience is for the person on the proposing side, that I think will be helpful for us to evaluate, like, are we making it easy for people to bring these ideas forward? Are there, you know, is it too much of a hurdle? Are there ways that we could streamline or make it more easier so that we're really being welcoming to that kind of creativity? So this would seem to be a really valuable process for us to go through.
Yeah, and I think adding to the agenda in future meetings, if not the next one, you know, how do we formulate the guidelines? And I think the key distinction is too, if it's, we would be the body to decide upon artwork that will be on city property. But if it's private property, then the idea that Annie suggested, something, we wouldn't necessarily say veto or deny anyone putting artwork on public property, but there's probably considerations such as permitting and other things that we may want to educate ourselves on to be able to provide artists and private businesses, for example, on what they need to know to put artwork in the city that's, you know, their property.
Right.
For example.
Right.
So if I could add something in the legislation for this ordinance, this body would make recommendations for public art or regarding proposed art for urban art, billboards, parks, DJs, areas, alleyways would be made to the city manager and city council for approval. And then that's 79-3 subsection C, 5. And then for recommendation regarding disbursement of art, of public funds for art would be subject to the approval of the city manager.
Right. Thank you, Andrew. When I think that that also kind of all falls under kind of a broader opportunity to be advisory to the city and with the community and developing an overall vision, right, for the power of public art community-wide, and being kind of a the spark, right, the catalyst for encouraging that to move forward, and for us to set goals for that, to set guidelines for how we would advise on, respond to proposals. But that broader mix can be both a combination of things that are happening in the public realm where the city would have a voice on that, as well as things that are happening on private property, but where we might be more of kind of an advisor, partner. There might be other ways for us to support those kind of private initiatives. And like to the idea of doing a mural initiative like that, there are a lot of really amazing examples of that are happening just within our region. The Murals Project in Ann Arbor, the Bright murals in Jackson is another one that's been quite successful. So to be able to we have such talent and we have such amazing canvases on our buildings, it would be really amazing to be able to help be part of realizing that. So Joe, you're gonna start kind of putting together a draft framework of kind of process at present. Aaron, you'll help us with sharing some models. And I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on this too. I think it'll be a really valuable process for us to go through in evaluating that. Kimmy, did I miss you? Did you have your hand up?
Oh, I just wanted to know if, well, I guess if Joe's putting it together, he knows the information. But I was just going to ask if, like, because there are murals up already, if we would be able to just, find out some of the documentation that they put together for those projects, just as a reference point. But it's not anything.
Yeah. I'll work with our preservation planner, who is the expert on all of that, and we'll make sure that you guys have all the information you need.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Then we've got just two more items on the agenda. The next section, and I'm just gonna, I think for a while, keep this on our agenda as we're kind of getting organized and moving forward. First on commission communications. Last month we had some really great conversation. Andrew, you were so helpful to us and helping us to understand kind of the way that we can communicate as a commission body as well as kind of individually, whether that's kind of, one-on-one, on email and social media. One of the things that we did talk about was starting to get to work on crafting that page for the city website on the commission. And I know that city staff has been super swamped. So I don't know where we are on that. We can kind of roll that forward to a next agenda item. Andrew, I know you've got your hands full. You've got like an election coming up.
So I could create the commission's webpage, but essentially the only things I would put the members' term limits and the enabling ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure what else the commission would like to be on the website.
I mean, the bylaws as well, but Lee's in our office. I don't know if any of you know Elise Jacobson. She is one of the founding members of First Fridays. She works in the planning department as our public engagement specialist and DDA coordinator. She also handles our website. So I could have her put together some basic stuff. And then as you guys approve things, we can make sure it goes on there as well. She also handles the city's social media. I would say that at this point, until we get more content, we probably shouldn't create our own social media account.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have things that might be helpful for us to share on the city's social media account. We definitely can do that. We do that for the majority of our commissions that don't have their own social media accounts. But we're trying to really get it into the 1 or 2 people at the city just so we can manage it properly and keep ahead. So those are the two things that we can do. If you guys choose to have anything else on your part of the website, which should be up before the next meeting, let me know. It'll be, most of our city commission web pages are pretty basic, except for things like our historic district or our planning commission that have and things like that. But then also creating the form on how to contact for public art, that would be another one.
Right, that'd be an important thing to have. I know we had talked about things like being able to share like resources or kind of, information on kind of peer organizations in the community. Kind of the, we were trying to also think about ways, and I think that's kind of a standard thing that you would have for the commission, like how people can share an idea. We kind of talked about that with the policy, the procedures that would be kind of tied to that. But we had talked about it being kind of also an opportunity to think about what would be the kind of resources that our page could serve as a bit of a informational hub more broadly for the community as well as for our creative community. So perhaps if any of the members have specific things that you'd like to see, you can share that with Joe and I, and we can make sure that kind of we start crafting that, and we can bring that back to the commission for more discussion with something to respond to once we have a draft. Does that sound like a game plan? Okay, great. And then the almost last item was we had some good conversation last month, thanks to Garrett, who had started a list of potential funding sources, partners. We had talked about starting to kind of frame whether it could be a Google Doc or some kind of a list that would start to capture kind of all of the variety of kind of local, state, regional, national grant sources, what their priorities are, funding, eligibility, funding levels, deadlines, those kinds of things that we could start not only to build kind of a resource base for kind of thinking about our work and how kind of where we might want to partner with the city or recommend going after funding for different priorities, but that could also be a very valuable tool for us to share with the community through like our website page as a resource for artists and organizations. We get questions all the time about like have you heard it, like have you seen a grant that does like this or that, and that might be kind of an interesting repository for us to have. So kind of thinking I think what we need to do is just organize kind of a spreadsheet that we could add information into. I don't know, Garrett, you kind of started something. You've already volunteered to do a lot of things. I don't know if this is something that anybody else is particularly interested in. I don't know, Joe, if that's something you could kind of queue up for us just as a blank form that we could add to. I don't even know if as a commission, if we can really, how can we do a Google Doc? The rest of the world does Google Docs. I know we have to figure out ways to do things transparently.
Yeah. It would be, depending on, I mean, you'd have to deliberate in open session, and that could be seen as a deliberation.
But adding things to something, Andrew and I will chat. Andrew and I chat probably too much, but we'll chat about ways to make things happen. So.
Okay. Just trying to think of a way that we can just have a place where we can feed that information without that being, another thing on your to-do list as staff, where we can just kind of build that resource and make it a tool that we can use easily. So how about you guys talk, and then Joe, you and I can talk, and then if any of you have resources that you've seen that we should be aware of, pass them my way, and I'm happy to make sure that they get added. I did want to make mention, and I'm happy to send an email to everybody on the commission and the staff. Culture Source yesterday, I think, announced a $150,000 grant that has been made available. It's a pretty short turnaround for artists, individual artists, and for venues that are kind of doing innovative things in this COVID moment. And the applications opened up on the 15th, and I think they're closing applications by the end of September. So that may be something that some of you may be interested in. I'm thinking that I'll go ahead and share that out on just my own personal social media and, help to share that opportunity out. Anything else on funding, resources, partners?
I'll
Garrett.
just say that when I brought this up last month, I really, to go off of the conversation about the website, it was really, in addition to things for us to consider from my experience, I think thinking about how to present like just links to local grants, statewide grants, national grants, divided by if they have a discipline or something, that would be really great. That's not something that exists that I know of. So
very true. And I'm realizing, because I've been on a Zoom since 9 o'clock this morning, I also just wanted to make a mention that I have not forgotten that I promised to draft a media release. And quite frankly, I think that it's kind of helpful for us to have had a bit more time together, kind of sorting through what we have on our plate, to have some meat for that. I will do that, and Joe and I have talked, and we'll coordinate with Joe and with Gina as well. And then the other thing that I just thought kind of tied to that, and it kind of ties to the funding partners potentially too, is also kind of inviting you to think about who are the other kind of non-arts and cultural creative community organizations or partners that we should think about connecting to or attending meetings or offer an opportunity on behalf of the commission to speak to them. You know, thinking about like chambers of commerce, thinking about like Destination Ann Arbor Ipsy Real, thinking about Eastern Michigan's Community Engagement Council, Downtown Association, DDAs, kind of groups like that, the Park Ridge Monday Morning Coffee group that connects with all the groups that are working in the Park Ridge community, kind of thinking about those opportunities. So everybody on the commission is connected in kind of unique ways across the community. So I would invite you to kind of think about what are those groups where it would be really smart for us to build awareness and potentially cultivate some partnerships and opportunities. Any other thoughts on that? If not, are we at audience participation, commission response? Was there anything that we overlooked? And it doesn't look like we have had anybody else join us. Is there any other proposed business? Nothing. I have two quick announcements, and I'll send these out in an email too. Well, actually, just one quick announcement, because I already mentioned the Artists Thrive virtual summit. Next week is also the Detroit Design Summit, and Culture Source earlier this week announced 4 like 1-hour public art symposiums that are happening, I think Monday, I want to say Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday. That's like 4 days next week. And they're like around the lunch hour or mid-afternoon. There's some amazing panels that are focusing on kind of different perspectives in doing public art in communities. They've got some amazing kind of local, national, and international speakers. So I'll share that out with everybody if you're able to take part and kind of take a look at those. I think all of the sessions are free, they're virtual, so it may be of interest to many of you. So I'll share that out. So no other proposed business. Our next meeting date then is Thursday, October 15th at 7. And that'll be like right around the corner. I know this one snuck up really quickly with everything that's happening. And I just really appreciate how everybody has been so all in and so thoughtful about getting this group started and rolling up our sleeves. So if there is no further business, is there a motion to adjourn? Don't all speak at once.
I'll motion to adjourn the meeting.
Michael, second, support?
Second.
Aaron. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Anybody really want to meet later? With 5 more minutes.